am live in just a second. Hold on a sec. I think my Wi-Fi just crapped out for a second. Okay. All right. Now we're good. Sorry, it's just my Wi-Fi just decides to like have a long lag every time we are just about to get going live, but as we are now. Anyway, hello everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Alien Investigations. I'm your host, Steven, and we are coming at you with a panel discussion regarding the X-Files Collectible Card Game. And helping me with this panel is I got my dear brother in arms, Mike from Oregon, who is also host of Matt and Mike's X-Files CCG. He's helping me out with this. Yeah, I know, right? No one really has. It's very obscure. And so Mike's gonna be helping us out with this panel, and I guess my cat is gonna be helping us out with this too, because he feels he's got some stuff to say. And I've got Mr. David Peace from an equally obscure YouTube channel called Studio Squim. David's joining us from Washington State, so he's here to help us out with, again, a very special episode of Alien Investigations where we're not actually going to be doing any gameplay, and we're not going to be busting open booster packs. So this is something very special. Recently came into... Sorry, my cat is really trying to interject here. I
thought that was my cat, honestly. Like, I'm in the new digs now, and I'm just like, is that my cat? Like, I couldn't tell. So.
Well, okay. Seamus is the unofficial mascot of Alien Investigations channel.
All right. Do you think you can keep it down for just a little bit? All right. So we're going to be looking at some playtest cards from before the X-Files Premier Edition was released, and this is even before the GenCon cards made their debut at GenCon 96. These are playtest cards that were used by all those involved in the playtesting process for the games during its initial inception, and so you can find the names of all those involved on the back of the Advanced Rules Manual, and that's a long list of names. But there's one name on there that is of special note. And I say that because the gentleman in question is the reason why we have these playtest cards that I'm about to show you. And he's also a special guest for this recording. And I'm going to bring him in right now. Former employee of United States Playing Card Company and original playtester who has worked at basically every rung of the ladder during his time when the X-Files CCG was in production. And he went on to create a number of other games, including the eBay game, right, Mike? Help me out. WCW Full Impact, which I have right over there. And come on.
So it's on the way. It's
Civilization? Oh my God. No.
Not Peasantry.
Peasantry, yeah. Yeah, so I actually ordered one, and it got lost in the mail in Colorado. Steven, I bet you saw those emails. Mm-hmm. And like eBay just like automatically like refunded my money, so I ordered a different one. But like apparently now I might get two, because like after 2 weeks in Colorado, like it shows that it's actually back on its way here. I don't know.
You've been doing a lot of refunds on eBay, as I noticed, but now we've gone off on that tangent and kind of took the wind out of his sails. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. David May.
Oh, man. Yes.
And David May, you are joining us live from the airport of all places. And so I really can't thank you enough for availing your time for this special episode, sir.
No problem. Glad I have this small layover. I'll be muting when possible, because even though I'm in the furthest corner of the airport, they put speakers over every seat to announce the lost luggage and boarding of the 6 passengers that are presently heading to Southern California.
So we will try not to take up as much of your time as possible, because I know you're going to be boarding in about an hour, so that is going to be our time frame for trying to wrap this up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in my camera so we can actually see what we're going to be showing the viewers, and we're going to be taking a very close look at some of the early playtest cards for the X-Files CCG, and this is generally the template that you guys were working with, Mr. May, back before the game was released. And so you had these white sheets, which is kind of like fairly thick paper, and it's, again, no images or anything to work with. It's just all text-based. And so tell us a little bit about like what the playtesting was like when you were take us through that time back in '96 when you, Brian Woodward, and all the other playtesters were playtesting this game. And while you're telling us, I'm going to show some of the audiences. I'm going to show the audiences the cards as they were in their various forms. So, and of course, we've got the commercially released one here, so everyone can take a look and see what the final version looks like and compare it to what we have here. But to start off, Mr. May, as you're telling us about the playtesting process that as you experienced it back then, I do want to note that we'll see some similarities to the final version, but also there's going to be some discrepancies as we go along. And maybe you can clue us in on give us some anecdotes from your time playtesting it, sir.
Yeah, not a problem. Well, right off the bat, I don't know if you want to show anybody on the back of these cards, which is almost as equally as important as the front of these cards, is the copyright information. And even when you look at the cards, you can see the different sizes and the X and the fonts and the print. So when you become a connoisseur of playtest cards, you realize that there was both an alpha set and a beta set, which is not denoted necessarily by the A's and B's in the bottom corner, which really was originally kind of designed to help with the printing of these test cards, which fell to Andy Grumman, right? So when we talk about this, again, of course, next games, and really, to be honest, how Brian and I, and then our group, our friends, kind of landed into this gig is almost by pure accident, because quite rapidly, Brian and I had applied separately for a job opening at Next Games. I took it upon myself with a third friend, to go down to what was then the Super Bowl in Phoenix. We drove down there for the Dallas Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers. And while we didn't have tickets, obviously, to the Super Bowl, but we crashed the then Super Bowl party, where Next Games was exhibiting a Red Zone. And it would be there that I would make friends with Andy. And then having played some Red Zone and having struck up a conversation, said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I applied for the position of game designer." And Andy was moved enough to go back and find my resume, which was most likely in the round filing cabinet. And but unbeknownst to us, or to me, but Andy shared with us, by the way, we got an opportunity here, and that is we're looking for play testers. And so at the time that we got the invitation and signed the NDAs, and the package came with these white cards that had been shrink wrapped together, we did receive the alpha deck. However, that was short-lived. That was really play tested internally. So sometimes when you hear the stories, about how people would go down to La Jolla to Next Games and they would be playing, it was the alpha set. Quite rapidly, things progressed. And of course, on lead design at that time was Duncan. I know we've talked about in the past how there was potentially some mechanics, some similarities with what was then the Red Zone top of the order. Those mechanics were solely based on what I will call a random modifier. I mean, we weren't really rolling dice. Dave's kind of talked about his history with the guys. Not only was everybody playing Magic, but even prior to that, there's a strong history of miniatures and Warhammer. And so it was just common both in that and, again, in the sports games to have these random modifiers, which ultimately narratively did not lend itself mechanically. Of course, in addition to that, as you've been flashing the cards by, some of the initial language, creature, adversary, X-File, you might notice that those terms themselves actually evolved over time. But I think ultimately, what's really presented in this, the core, whether it was alpha or the beta, and of course, once you get into the beta game testing, which is really where we spend our time, because we rapidly realized that the alpha just hadn't come together. Really, it was alpha. It was just we're throwing some stuff at the wall. Again, some of the mechanics were removed, but the thing that carried over, again, eloquent, is that X-File and that checklist and those attributes. And so even though the names might change, that became the core component. And I know some people back in the day, they always said, oh, you're playing Clue, which may not have been a fair assessment, but at least you had something people could wrap their mind around through a process of elimination. And so that's consistent, even though the language is not. And I think the language, I'm trying to remember, my mind is telling me, which that's not a good thing, that some of the language was influenced by feedback from Fox/1013. And I think the reason why creatures became adversaries is I think there might have been a concern with the term creature. Now, I could be wrong. I could totally, this is the anchovies on the pizza, but even in these early stages, I'll call it the aesthetic, even though there's no pictures here, but the language and what those cards would represent, the aesthetic, was probably equally being evaluated. And we talked about that when we looked at some of the old, NLS cards. But of course, NLS didn't have anything to do with necessarily the gameplay or the mechanics. That was, again, a function of Duncan and Ron. And then, of course, Andy really also had a huge impact because he was receiving all the feedback as far as the cards themselves.
So as you're discussing, Mr. Mann, I don't want to interrupt because this is great history that we're getting. I want to point out that when we're looking at the alpha cards here, we have the characteristics here, that affiliation, motive, method, and result that ultimately find their way onto the X-File card. We have the card title. We have the episode title from which the image and the flavor text is pulled, and the flavor text we have right here. And I also note that we also have a approximate timestamp from where they plan to harvest the image that would go on the card. So that's what we get with the beta card, with the alpha card. And then as we hop over to the beta card, here is where we're actually seeing the rarity for the card for each of the cards. Because at this point in time, as with the beta cards, the production of it was a little bit further along, and they were starting to get a sense of like which cards were going to have a fixed, a common, an uncommon, a rare, or ultra rare rarity at this point. And so this is as you were saying, this is the time when you entered the scene and you were involved in it. Yes.
Yeah, and again, that is kind of also an indicator of the scope of the initial playtesting, predominantly taking place at Next in La Jolla, in-house, amongst family, amongst friends and employees, and amongst NLS. Not that NLS was playing the game, but that core infancy where it's kind of, kind of got to do everything all at once. It's kind of interesting for everybody who's kind of involved with the Discord. And if you're creating, we'll say, cards, or you've ever attempted to create cards, because we've got so many different things going on. And again, in the future, where Brian and I would sit down and do Scooby-Doo, you kind of have to do it all at the same time. It's that first run through all the videos in an attempt to find not only cool shots and cool quotes, but then also imagine you got to have cool mechanics while still attempting to have the foundations. And what I mean by foundations is the X-Files themselves obviously come from the episodes. And that kind of fell into place organically. But when it was determined that you would have sites and that you would go to a site in order to investigate, in order to ask the question and get the clue, now that becomes a kind of a separate, almost cookie cutter formula. And I want to be careful when I use that terminology, because as you'll get into the witnesses and the equipment down the road, the formula becomes, I guess, more evident. You know, in Magic terms, you get a 1-1, a 1-2, a 2-1, a 2-2, a +2, a +3, right? And it becomes very formulaic, where you got to have that balance. We'll say of 1/3. We'll just call it, basic site investigation population. 1/3 adversary, which again initially was creatures, but that is that's the X-Files. It's the creature per episode, monster per episode. So and again, finding that scope, it's all very organic. A lot of times, like I said, as far as my growth as a game designer is, when we design games, we attempt to develop a simulation. And remind me later to give credit where credit's due, because eBay came from Marcus, Presentry came from Brian, but if you want to go see something that's a mathematic impossibility, it's Age of Empires. That one came from me. So, but yeah, I don't think anybody's going to Google that.
I want to ask regarding the packaging for this, because in addition to these loose cards that you sent me, and again, thank you so very much. I cannot thank you enough for this this big chunk of X-Files CCG lore. But what we also have here is a section of them that came with the box you sent me of shrink wrap cards. And I was wondering, when you first received these, did you receive it in the long box of which I have now, or did you receive them all like shrink wrapped, such as this, and you had to crack open each?
Yeah, that was it. So that long box was, of course, just one of my long boxes that I had for all the other games that I was playing. No, you got a regular box in the mail full of those shrink wrap bundles, and you cracked them open, and of course, sometimes you would even have those cards which we're looking at, like the X-Files, but with no information. They're kind of blank placeholders. Sometimes you would have a different color piece of paper, like a yellow or pink. And so usually the backs would be printed, but you kind of got these generic, and when they were cutting them out, I mean, they were very excited. They got the guillotine, right? This is good old fashioned cut by hand. Again, Andy, poor guy. So that's probably why we didn't have like hundreds of playtesters, because all those sets had to be printed on the printer, and then they all had to be hand cut so you could see where the lines are. And I'm in a hurry, and you got enough there to work with. And they were so excited because they had the shrink wrapper.
And I also want to bring in Jonathan 𝐗 as another one of our panelists. We're starting a little bit early, Jonathan, because David May has to get on a flight. So again, this is very much like in the spirit of David May's Corner, as we know it on Matt and Mike's X-Files CCG. But Jonathan, you, David, Mike, I also want you to throw any questions you have towards Mr. May as I'm going through and showing these cards. And I also, again, want to point out this one bit of shrink-wrapped cards that I have not opened, and I was curious, Mr. May, what out of all of the many cards in this long box, for what reason did you decide not to crack open this last one?
Because years ago I realized that somebody wanted to have the joy of tearing it apart, and I figured I've opened enough of these this lifetime. Now I don't know, that box has been around.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that the card listed here, Covert Warning, which is an event card from the episode The Host, this is a card that was not part of the commercially released set, neither Premiere nor Truth is Out There edition. Now,
so you might be holding playtest cards for expansions that were never released, and I never opened it, and so that could be something very special.
It says A at the bottom. Did you notice it says A?
Because those are those again. Originally, the A's and the B's were supposed to denote either sheets or decks. It's just kind of a holdover. The 1A. Again, I don't think Andy ever deleted them. Again, Andy would be the one that was responsible for taking the internal team's notes and getting them onto the probably Excel spreadsheet, probably even Works. This was probably original files were on Microsoft Works. And yeah, which only this
had Clippy up in the corner there helping you out.
So yeah, little Clippy. So again, even if we had the Works files, I don't even know if we could still open them. But the bottom line is that yeah, what you have there, which I did not open, could contain actual concepts and ideas for expansion cards that I chose to leave in pristine condition.
Very cool. And I will be cracking this open as we work through some of these cards. Now, I do want to point out, because there are so many cards and we do not have an infinite amount of time to go through them all for this one broadcast, what we're going to be doing for this episode is that we're going to be showing the X-File cards as I have been, and then I'm also going to take us through some of the agent cards because there are some discrepancies, or I say discrepancies, some deviations from the playtest version to what we got in the commercial release version, and some of it is more surprising than others, and that's also was hoping to get some comments on that, although Mr. May, I know you won't recall exactly some of the reasons behind why why some of those changes were made, but
I think right now he's thinking, why did I send this stuff to a librarian?
Yeah, don't worry, I won't be pressuring you on
I
that.
knew what I was doing. I'm like, why did they ask me? Brian was our group secretary. And so if you could imagine, which is difficult at the time, I'm living in a double wide, and the guys would come over to my trailer, and there's a decent group of us, I got 6 or 7 guys. So we got a game taking place usually on the kitchen table, maybe a game taking place on the coffee table. The rest of the guys just strewn around on the sofa. Back then, they just got my Prime Star in. So, watching ESPN2 on Prime Star. And so everybody would make comments. And then poor Brian, who kind of really was the administrative force. I call Brian the believer. I mean, not that we don't enjoy the show, but he is a true believer, a real believer. And so he quotes, he definitely made sure that whatever needed to be captured, information needed to be shared, because that's really how it's going to impact what I would call the details between the beta versions and the final product. Those are balancing tweaks. I don't really, once we get into the beta, what you see is what you get. There's not going to be huge changes. I'm sure that we had to break up some card powers right? You know, you got this cool idea for an effect, a game mechanic, because again, balancing what I will call core game mechanics. Again, not that I want to talk about other CCGs, but almost all CCGs, the idea is that you're going to take cards from your hand and bring them into play. There has to be some cost associated with that process, RPCP, mana, whatever, right? But also, too, we would have what we would call deck manipulation to draw cards, you know, to force discard. These are CCG-esque mechanics. So you're going to want to introduce basic card game, collectible card game mechanics, hand and deck mechanics, in addition to, I know I need to do resource management, again, backdooring into combat, because we know we have to have the monster of the week. So we are going to make it to adversaries, and we have to, you know, because of our background as gamers, and not just Magic, but miniature gamers. And now that kind of brought that up more than once, you should be able to see how that took place, because we had long range combat, close range combat, you know. So then, of course, back to the +1s and +2s and things of that nature, and what happens when you get hurt. You know, the goal wasn't necessarily to kill agents, but as you know, the variation rules and the killer cards. So, you know, all those ideas had to come from somewhere, and usually that came from the show itself. But and again, if you're trying to explain that, yeah, you can kill an agent and you go and you kill Mulder, no one is going to be happy at Fox and 1013, because you know, they take that personal.
Now, also want to get a sense of how many playtests were you involved in, and what sort of the things that you noticed while you were playtesting the game that you felt like was in major need of revision.
Well, I think, again, we short-lived on the alpha. I really don't want to bring that up, because that random modifier was just making things complicated. And I think for most people, if you could imagine you have random modifiers, that really is going to affect deck construction. It kind of makes it less fun. So to go more fun, you kind of had to relieve that mechanic. Now that mechanic has been relieved, I don't remember. I mean, we played quite a bit. My place was really where everybody would come to crash, so they would show up anyway. So I have to imagine in that window, I don't think we played hundreds. You know, I've got at least 40 plus. Usually, I think we sent in 2 or 3 play reports, right, where we might have questioned card functionality. And again, hard for me to remember the details. Brian would have to write up the reports. But as I mentioned back then, I was playing a ton of Magic, in addition to Red Zone and Top of the Order, and really had enjoyed the math of those 2 products. So evaluating speed, or evaluating, do we have the resources? Is the pool sufficient? You know, how many RP do you really need in order to really play cards? Where, you know, again, just magic numbers. If I got 10 RP, then I'm going to be able to do a couple things. I can play a couple cards. I know I can get a side out, and that's without agent abilities. That's just, I would hate to just be able to do nothing. You know, pace of game was always a concern. I think I've talked about this in the past too. It's that white whale, man. It's chasing the mass. What I mean by chasing the mass is the mass market. And so do I make a game that makes, you know, Warhammer fans happy? Do I write something complicated, like, you know, we were playing Third Reich by Avalon Hill. How big should the rule book be? Versus I need something that you can sit down and play in 5 minutes, and trying to always strike that balance, recognizing potentially who the true customer base is going to be, who the core audience is going to be. So again, that's mostly aesthetics. what we're commenting on again is, should this be 4RP or 2RP? Is this power overrated? Yes, asking a question is incredibly powerful. How often should you be able to ask a question without completing site prerequisites? And
I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to go into the agent cards. We've gone through the 41 X-File cards that were made available for the checklist and for selection when you're first starting the game. And so the agents that we have here, I also want to point out that this is including cards from the Premier Edition, the Truth Is Out There Edition, and the 30 exclusives, that is. Most of them are represented on here. And we even have some of the 96 promos, including like Agent Henderson, that's going to show up in just a little bit. So we have the 96 promos included in here as well. There is actually one 1013 ultra rare Mulder's Near-Death Experience, the event card that was released with 1013. That's the only 1013 expansion card that's in here. So we have Premier Edition, Truth Is Out There Edition, 96 promos included, and Truth Is Out There Edition exclusives is more specifically. Again, most of them, like Melissa Scully, Margaret Scully, are not there, but you do see, like, we'll see Nurse Owens in One Breath and other ultra rares and rares that are exclusive to Truth Is Out There Edition. But it won't be in this episode. We're going to do those on a second episode because, again, tonight we're just going to go through X-Files, agents, adversaries, and witnesses if we have time, because Mr. May does have a flight to catch. And so what we will see here, and so Mr. May, I think, if I'm not mistaken, so we're looking at the alpha card here, which basically does sort of remind me of those Donruss cards that we saw pre-United States Playing Card Company, because those basically just contain the skills and then a bio. There was no game effect assigned to the agents at that point in time. And of course, we had this point system happening at that point, as opposed to like the agents like Mulder, as we know, costs 7 resource points, which, as you see, is reflected here on the beta version of the card. So at this time, for the agent cards, there was a point system involved in it. And I know, again, this was, as you say, this was kind of before your time, but do you have any recollection about this point system?
Well, yeah, no, so back to, due to the diversity of backgrounds, and so you could start seeing the influences. Again, collectible card games, most of us cut our teeth on the same one. Secondarily, we talked about, Warhammer and Workshop. Now, as we move into agents, it really kind of lends itself almost to RPGs. Fortunately, no one was necessarily too upset that we were giving statistical evaluation or placing the different agents, or comparing the different agents by giving them a numeral, their alien investigation, their bureaucracy, criminal investigation. And of course, the more important the agent or the bigger the character, the more powerful, you would just go get a deck full of all, Mulder and Scully. And of course, putting them together would really give you the freedom to do whatever you want. So anticipating that, a point system was established, a ranking system was established, just like you would models, in Warhammer. And so we're gonna play with a 200-point deck, like again, 1,000-point armies. And so that's really what influenced that language. But of course, moving forward, that was integrated and into what we have. I do want to point out
real quick with regards to Agent Colton's effect, and he is one of those agents like Nancy Spiller, Mo Box, Agent Rich, who have an effect that allows them to pay for cards that have a certain keyword associated with the cards that come up, like sites or events or bluffs. Now, in this beta version, we see that the effect for Colton says place 2 Bureau RPs on this card, and the rest of the effect is consistent with what we get in the commercial release, but it's notable that the effect called for placing 1 RP on the card, whereas at the time the beta card called for 2. So you could actually have used 2 to pay for a card with a certain matching keyword at the time that the beta version was in play. So at some point it was reduced from 2 to 1 on these cards. So sorry to interrupt, Mr. May, but I did want to point that particular deviation from the commercially released cards to those who are tuning in. Please do carry on. And what I also wanted to ask you, because I asked actually as I get to Nancy Spiller, I do have in this case some duplicates. Now it's not too often as I was going through and sorting these set, but there were sometimes there were duplicates provided, which in this case I have 2 of the beta version for Nancy Spiller. So I was just curious, is the reason for including certain duplicates just for well, I guess with agents you can only have 1 copy of the card, but I guess unless you're putting 1 in the deck. But anyway, I did want to point out that there's occasionally duplicates in included in this set that you gave me.
Yeah, so we actually got more than, for lack of a better term, 1 set. We were given my group, Brian's group, we were given enough to be able to have more than 3 or 4 playtesters. So we had more than 3 or 4 sets, and of course too it was really short-lived. I don't think we ever personally were involved in the discussion of copies and multiple copies and maximum number of copies. They had already internally kind of figured that out. I guess the second, and again, I don't know who to attribute it to, is the keyword. That also was an excellent design decision, even though maybe it was too good. We had too much. The question was always, could you refine the keywords? But we did learn something, at least I did, about game design, and that is perfection takes too long and costs too much. So sometimes it's just got to be engineered well enough to sell. But so again, agents themselves, really inspired by the champions, if you will, of the. In fact, I'm using Warhammer. So envision them. He's going to lead my army. Mulder's going to lead my team. And of course, I've got to have the other members of the team, the other agents. So I have to go get those other figs. I have to go get those other characters. I have to have a point system in order for that to be balanced. And then, of course, back to the idea of what is a good number of resources. So again, they settled on RPCP. So what's a good number? What's an average number? What's the expectation? How many will a player generate? And how much should they be able to do? And what's the level of interaction? Which is really, to think about it, what is it good if they play 5 cards? I play a site. Again, if you envision, and I realize as we built decks, adversaries become a little more challenging because of the keyword, which was, again, brilliant idea, but sometimes in application, finding the balance. And so we see that reflected, again, predominantly in the beta cards, where now we have consistent language, and we're going to discover, tweak the specific values and some of the functionality to better meet that objective, which is what's a fun turn. And that will be more reflected, or whatever we came up with collectively, the notes that we sent, the notes that they had, the notes that other groups had, again, all that would be pulled together by Andy, and then they did the final crunch. And then the final crunch is what you have on really the reflected in the final card. And I don't ever remember seeing another round of playtest cards. Go ahead.
As we go through the witness or the agent cards, as we're getting towards the end of them, I do want to ask if you recall, like, regarding the point system here. Now, for the commercially released cards, we have that magic number of 20 that our agents' total resource points cannot exceed for the starting team. I was wondering if you recall, was there a certain, like, was the same thought process applied, that there's a magic number that could not be exceeded with the point system here, and it was just reduced? Or
it was simplified. I think it's because, again, as I mentioned, I've been using the language. Again, you have 1,000-point army, so I have 1,000-point deck. But to get away from that, because again, what's the goal? The goal is not to put all the best agents out, because you can't stop them. They'll be able to do whatever they want, and so to kind of force creativity and diversity of play and come up with these different agent combinations. Again, the point system always existed. However, we don't carry the point system from either from the totality of not just the agent group, but really perceiving the deck or the army, or but we just simplify it. And that of course, I don't know if I'm ruining it for anybody by comparing it to Warhammer, but that gets us away from that, right? That gets us away from those roots. So we kind of had to forget where we came from with top of the order Red Zone and Warhammer, and to a degree Magic. We had to forget that, because without that game, that we don't have a collectible card game. So, we just got to tip our cap and say those are the spiritual successors, along with the other games that Duncan and Ron had played. It's kind of like music. We're just using a certain number of notes. We're attempting to rearrange those to play a different tune. And again, because of the simulation and because of the show, again, I hat off, right? Because they already have the basic principle. They have the basic idea and the checklist, and again, the keywords. So everything else is easy. And if you look at go ahead.
Sorry, I did want to ask about what you said earlier about when you guys would finish a playtest. As you said, Brian Woodward was your secretary of sorts. So he would type up the notes from the playtest, and then he would submit it in some sort of like a written report. Would he email it to Andy? Because I know this was '96, and of course,
we still had that. We still had email, but I'm pretty sure he mailed him a copy.
Okay.
So we literally looked at postage stamp back then, even though we had email.
And so as we get to the end of the agents, I was sort of saving one of the best for last, because we do have Dr. Charles Burke, the agent whose game effect in the beta version is notably different from what we get in the finalized commercial release card here. As we all know, Dr. Charles Burke has an effect where we place a token on him, and that token is removed to negate one occult adversary. But at the time during the beta version that you were playtesting, sir, the game effect was place 3 tokens on this card, discard a token to add 1 point to any alien investigation or occult investigation skill check, which is kind of more reminiscent of like what Agent Pendrell's effect wound up being.
I think he's listening to the boarding call there.
Yes, you can. You won't listen to that. I muted so you don't have to hear it. But yes, there's.
I'd love to ask a question if I could. So we're going through these, obviously the play testing. There were so many times, back in the lore of Matt and I, that we would come to a problematic situation. Was there any 1 or 2 situations during the play testing that you came to where like you played a card and no one could agree with you, No one could agree with anybody else. This is problematic. We need to shut this down. I mean, even today, like if you remember the very first tournament when they played, when they played you, it was like, yeah, this isn't a game. This isn't fun, right? And there are certain cards that have been banned over the years in tournament play. Was there any situation you remember specifically where you're like, this doesn't work?
You know, I'm trying to remember the specific, but boy, I'm pretty sure I remember Brian being upset. And again, I'm trying, so yeah. But what was the specific back then? My gosh. So the answer is yeah. I mean, literally, like this is dumb, which is really rough for us because we're just play testers, and a game designer, nothing more they want to hear is that your idea sucks.
Now, I wanted to point out that we're going to be looking at the adversary cards now, beginning with the squeeze adversary, for which actually I said the squeeze, which is the title of the beta test version, which they eventually dropped that when we get to the commercially released one. But it's worth noting, it's much like the X-Files cards that we were looking at earlier. We had the initial card suit was Creature, before eventually Creature for the alpha version, before we eventually get to the beta version where it's revised to adversary. So like the commercially released cards, we have the affiliation keyword here, and but that we don't have anything like Creature as of this point, because Creature becomes the card suit as the card suit at this point, and then it eventually is reduced to a keyword that is included along the vertical portion of the card. We have the combat and the long range combat and the close range combat, and the health is included there. As of this point, we're still working with like the primary secondary that was sort of the staple of the alpha versions before we get to the cost of the card, which in this case is 3 CP in the beta version.
Correct. I should probably go back and talk a little bit about how that primary secondary mechanic may have worked. Imagine, if you will, that every card comes with a primary and secondary. Again, if you were to play Red Zone or Top of the Order, every card has a color code on there, and so I could flip the next card in my deck to get the random modifier to apply to a check, right, or to a skill. But like I said, that went away, because imagine if every investigation, not only were you playing cards from your hand, but you were in essence flipping a card over from your deck in order to get that random modifier. And of course, rarity would affect potentially if it was a positive, modifier, or maybe even those more powerful cards might have negative modifiers on it. So it might have caused emotional grief to see your, potential deep throat be used for a modifier, not a game effect. And of course, you would just try to burn through your deck as quickly as possible so that you could reshuffle and start over. But again, that's kind of how that mechanic would function. And then the language had to be refined.
I want to point out here that I'm putting in the commercially released adversary for Living Machine, which does not have any playtest cards playtest version that I found while sifting through the box. So as I've gone through and sorting them, by and large, most of the cards that were released for Premiere are represented here in playtest form. But I did want to point out that the Living Machine does not have a white playtest version.
Yeah, that's my fault.
Yeah. Oh, that's your fault, sir? Did you just lose the card in shipping it over?
Yeah, in the past,
he just crumpled it up and threw it away.
Yeah, well, remember we had more than one set, and I'm sure if we could contact, I haven't gone back to the original pay testers to say, hey, what do you got hiding in your closet? I'm sure some of them are pack rats, though. We did, at least the guys, whenever I had the opportunity, we made sure to share the love. So we passed the product. They would have had access if they maintained it. I mean, we got old. I've now been through moves and natural disasters, so it's a miracle I even had those left.
So this card, the Deadly Blur in beta, cost 4 as opposed to the 7 on the commercially released one. So you had to imagine, like, as powerful as that effect is, it's probably a good thing it was up to 7, considering how long the agents are kept in the hospital and how their health didn't even have to be reduced to 0 in order to hospitalize them. So that might have been one instance in which during the playtesting it was like, gosh, this card is too powerful as it is. We need to revise it somehow.
Well, we've had that similar
all the
debate,
time, right? Like on the Discord channel.
Oh yeah, all the time.
The new sets or whatever. I mean, even sometimes it's just one CP or one resource,
like it is here.
Like, hey,
6 CP
one more
versus 7. Yeah, and gosh, the bickering about that would just go on and on sometimes in Discord. And I gotta ask Mr. May, was that like a recurring thing that you recall happening when you guys were playtesting? Is like, oh, it's just too expensive. Maybe we just need to add one more CP to the cost, and that'll be all right.
Yeah, on our limited. I mean, you kept seeing the same cards coming back over and over and over again, and they were just stomping. It was an automatic kill this investigation card, because that's not fun. Like I said, and I'm just gonna be honest, guys, man. A lot of times when you're making this stuff up, you have no idea. You don't have enough hands. You don't have enough play time. You don't have enough revision. You just don't. Just the way it works. Oh, don't mind me. I'm gonna get up now.
Oh, sure. And so, so we're still looking at the adversaries of this point. And so by and large, most of the discrepancies that we find between the beta version and the commercially released ones is largely regarding the cost of the card. By and large, the effects, or well, occasionally in the case of Suppressed Fury, the quote was adjusted. But actually, you can find this little bit of flavor text on the GenCon version of Suppressed Fury. If you are one of those few people like Jonathan and Mike here, well, actually, and Mr. David May, who are fortunate enough to have a GenCon deck. Now, I also want to show we have some of the Truth Is Out There edition exclusive cards like Brother Martin Is Attracted to You, which I do not have, Mr. May, an alpha, or I'm sorry, an alpha version of that card. I only have the beta version, which actually I have like three duplicate copies.
We got to remember, so when we talk about alpha too, that's not every card that was ever invented or created. That was just a core to get it going.
Yeah, and I'm noticing that is the case with a lot of the 30 Truth Out There edition exclusives. So that possibly suggests that by the time alpha was completed, they did not have these particular ones completed. And here's another instance where we have the beta version for John Barnett Links You to Mulder for the Truth Is Out There edition version of that card. So I guess that would suggest that at the time that alpha was written, we didn't have this adversary hadn't been conceived as of yet.
Right. Gentlemen, I do apologize. Looks like it's time.
Okay, so yes, I do want to thank you, Mr. Ray, since you are
took you to the plane.
Yes, thank you so much, and I hope you have a safe flight, sir. So I really appreciate you filling yourself for this evening. And so, you have a safe flight, and then we'll schedule a follow-up show so we can go over some of the other ones. And of course, you can give us some more backstory to your time playtesting. Anyway, good day, sir. Have a good flight, and we'll talk to you when you land.
You got it, guys. I can't do the finger guns. All right. See you.
All right. Take care, sir. Anyway, so guys, I just have some adversaries to go through. But what are your guys' thoughts as you're looking through some of these that we are what we're seeing here?
I'll tell you right now, I've been watching the bottom of the screen, and Jonathan has just been just chewing his fingernails, like waiting to freaking talk. Like what are you thinking of? What are you thinking about these things, man? These are crazy. No BS, man. I haven't even seen these. Okay, Steven like got all these in the mail. I got the other stuff.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen this stuff. This is nuts.
Yeah, no, I'm just the difference. I didn't even know there were alpha and betas until just now.
Yeah,
did not know that. Had no idea. So that's just the whole primary, secondary thing, the whole points, no idea. You know,
and Jonathan's wife is like, "Oh shit! Here's another $1,000. Jonathan's gonna drop these alpha cards."
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, David, because I do want to point out that, that this is a gift from Mr. May, and this is much like the pewter, Mike. It is something that I'm never going to part with for any amount of money, and we all know, because we are a part of the same Discord community, and we have a buy, trade, sell channel within that where we do discuss things that we find on eBay and great bargains that we encounter in our time shopping around for these cards. However, in addition to that, we have also seen some of these very playtest cards crop up on eBay, and much to our annoyance, they are being listed at exorbitant prices. Like one of these cards is listed from anywhere between $100 to $300, upwards of $1,200, depending on what it is, for very little. Very little.
Is over $1,600.
Yeah, other than the fact that the commercially released version might be a little bit rarer than some of the other ones, which at the time where some of these, as Mr. May was talking, and as I pointed out during the alpha version, we did not have the rarity assigned to them as of yet, although when you get to the beta version, the rarity is available. I do want to point out that, just given my own opinion, that by no means do I think that these playtest cards, as seen on eBay, are anywhere near worth that value, that very inflated value that is listed on there. It's ridiculous, and only someone of subpar intelligence would be inclined to purchase a card from the prices that are on there. And yeah, if I'm screwing over either of those two sellers, saying that, hey, don't worry, because no one's really watching this anyway.
Nobody thinks that.
Yeah, you're not screwing anybody over, man. I mean,
and nobody thinks they're worth
that. When it came to the OG,
well, the two sellers think they're worth that.
Yeah.
Well,
here's the thing. I genuinely believe that the guy that's trying to sell these on eBay, and I've talked to him, whoever was the person that bequeathed him these cards, I don't know. He wouldn't confirm that, but I guarantee you it's somebody on that list in the back page of that book. They told him, hey, these might be worth something someday. Sell them for a house. And when he saw that, he was like, oh, holy crap, maybe I can sell this for a house. And he posted them. And guys like me, Jonathan, Kurt, we talked to him. And he ballooned the prices.
Got crazy.
Are they worth that? No. Like, what's that saying in the art world? Art is only worth what you're willing to pay for it.
Yep.
So if I put a Scully's Dream test card on eBay for $500 and it sells, what's it worth? Well, it's worth $500.
It's worth at least $500,
right? If I put it on there for $50 and it sells for $52, what's it worth? Well, it's worth $52 because that's what somebody was willing to pay. I'm not gonna do that, and I don't think any one of us here is going to pay that much for something like that. It's a cool find, and trust me, I've got a safe up here. I've got a safe up here that's full of crazy crap, right? Jonathan, right? But I'm not going to sell it, like Steven said going into this. This stuff is not something that any one of us is looking to make any money off of. Now, with that said, asterisk, if I needed a kidney transplant, Jonathan, I'm going to give you a call. But
Well, wait, are you going to be asking Jonathan for his kidney or for money? Which one's it going to be there, Mike?
Either way, man. Either way,
Jonathan, literally, what is it worth to you? Is it worth your kidney?
He's thinking about it.
That'd be like an interesting, like we're laying, we're laying like gurney to gurney, and he'd be like, "Hey man, thanks for doing this." I'm like, "Cool, man. Here's the pewter. See you on the other side."
And as soon as he gets the pewter, he jumps off the bed and runs.
Well, I do want to point out that for the Dark Adversary, they already had the rarity of promo established at the time that the beta was in the works. So that's cool to note. So yeah, I'm almost to the bottom of the adversaries, and then we're going to go over to the witnesses and what's that?
Because some of the cards in the GenCon deck, like Fighter Interceptor, they were in the GenCon deck not as promos, and then ended up being promos. So that's kind of interesting. It makes you wonder, time-wise, were some of these things still going on as the GenCon deck was being put together already?
Yeah, and actually, speaking of the Gen, go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to say, I guarantee you, it was right up to the last second deciding on what's going to be a promo, what's going to be. I mean, some of them, the cards, the effects kind of lend themselves to be ultra rare just because of the power that's assigned to them. But even a lot of movies, especially in the digital age now, they're editing them right up until like 2 days before the premiere.
Oh, and sometimes after
the movie. Yeah, well, yeah. If you're George Lucas,
that's true.
So one thing of note, as we're looking at the alpha version and the beta version for these adversary cards. So the alpha version of the card, basically the text that we're seeing here is the activator, which is just telling us play this card on any team in the field that is investigating an affiliation question. And so basically they just decided to axe all that text and just make it the activator that we get on the vertical side, which very concise way of going about doing that. Now it goes on to say the demonic snake attacks the team, ! So beyond that, it's basically spelling out here in the alpha version that an activator needs to be met in order to play it so that it can attack the team. Whereas in the beta version here, this is where you would normally be seeing the game effect. However, for Slithers in the Night, as we all know, it doesn't have a game effect until you get to the GenCon version of it, though, which it actually, for some reason, on the GenCon version, it just had a abduction effect on there. But I thought that's very interesting to note that, when you're looking at the alpha cards, what you're seeing is basically the activator spelled out in order to attack the team, and then they decided to make that more concise. And here's another instance where I had 2 copies of Private McAlpin, the zombie here. 5 CP is its cost, which it ultimately was up to 6 by the time they get to the commercially released version. So again, it says play this card on any team in the field that is investigating a site with a method question, and eventually it was revised to motive by the time you get to the activator on the commercially released one. The zombie attacks the team, ! Long range attacks cause only half damage, round up to the zombie. So you get the game effect here, and it's all just in text, not in more like keyword activator format as we see on the commercially released cards. But by the time you get to, when you're looking at the beta, they are breaking it down into more concise terms, and because obviously you got to throw some images and graphics on these cards, so you're going to need to make use of as much real estate as possible, so you get the aesthetics in there.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. You can see from alpha to beta to final the evolution of the whole thing, and with the alphas, it's kind of, I don't mean this obvious in a derogatory term, but just obvious that they were kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what would stick. And, case in point, the point system, they probably started out with 50 and then narrowed it down to, and I'm very thankful that they narrowed it down to very simple digits for me, and lowered it from whatever it was down to 20, and then lowered the cost of specifically with the agents.
Oh yeah, if this game had been based on math, I'd have never, like, are you kidding me? Like,
screw this game.
Yeah, Matt and I would have been like, wait, X-Files, wait, how much? Wait, you got to count to like 73? Screw this. We would have been out, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like make a team with these alpha cards and try to get a sense of like what was the magic number. Was it 40? Because Mulder and Scully are like 22 and 20,
22 and 20,
respectively.
Yeah.
So
22 and 20.
I would have to say it's probably about 40, and they're like, yeah, no, we don't. Do we really need 40? Let's go down to 20 or something.
I think it would be less than.
In the game, you can do Mulder, Scully, Skinner. You can do Mulder, Scully, Skinner in the game, right? That's 7, 7, and 6. So that's 20.
Yep.
So yeah, it would be I think it's
Mulder,
Skinner was 17.
Scully.
She was 17. Or Skinner was 17. Scully was 20, and Mulder was 22, if I recall. I get that.
See, already you lost me. Me and Mike are just like, what?
Yeah.
If I got that right, I should get a prize.
Yeah. So that's 17, 20, and 22. So yeah, Mike, you would have been like, I'm done. Mike would never have gotten into this game if that were the case.
No.
So actually, I want to point out that they have a different sort of activator idea going on here for the bounty hunter, which would have made this card very difficult to play. It says, play this card on any team in the field. If your opponent knows your adversary's affiliation, the bounty hunter attacks the team. So the activator, as it is on this alpha card, was depending upon the characteristic being known at the time. And so thankfully they decided to do away with that, probably because maybe there was a realization that, yeah, that's going to make it way too situational.
I don't know, man. That seems kind of like an interesting idea, doesn't it? Like,
yeah, that's neat. And there's
we might
no
be
other
seeing that in one of our expansions. Then,
yeah, that's like, I mean, it's a niche card. Don't get me wrong, but also if you build a deck specific, like, I don't know, man, that'd be pretty cool, actually, if you could make that work.
I would probably limit it to be like, play it when at least one of your X-Files characteristics is known, but not be specific about like it being affiliation or whatever, because I feel like that's just going to be too, like, bit too niche.
It looks like what they ended up doing was making him a more easy to play, more lethal adversary, and just up the CP cost. So you just had to spend a lot. You could play him.
Yeah. His cost was only 7 at this point.
Yeah.
What about, like, and hear me out, like, what about a deck where you basically fill your deck with nothing but affiliation sites, right? But you also fill it with those event cards that can change affiliation to method or affiliation to, so once you make that initial affiliation, you can actually use those other sites, those alternate cards, and go after different effects. I don't know, man. It's an intriguing idea.
So
it would definitely be
again with the truth. Oh, go ahead. I do want to point out again with the Truth Is Out There editions, the Truth Is Out There edition exclusives, they don't have an alpha version. So just like with Leonard here, in the case of Leonard, I've got 3 copies of Leonard here.
By the time they got the Truth Is Out There, they knew what they were doing. They probably didn't need alpha so much.
Exactly. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess that makes it pretty obvious that they didn't make those cards at exactly the same time. I mean, Dave kind of makes it sound like they did them all at the same time, but they clearly did not. I mean, some of them
definitely Alpha was the hang out at Dave May's trailer eating pizza and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Evil One Intervenes was retitled. Cost the same, affiliation site the same. By and large, it's pretty consistent. The flavor text is just a little different, though.
Has anyone ever made that card work legitimately? 100% legitimately made that card work.
I almost did in a game with GM, but I was trying to manufacture it, though.
Nathan got me with what's Margie and who's the other one? Margie and Tony.
Yeah, the girls.
Kleingen or whatever.
And he added the evil one to it and took me to the cleaners.
He actually played those and the evil one and made that work.
Yep.
So we have the phenomenon keyword on the beta card that found its way over, which phenomenon is the only instance. This is the only instance when that keyword appears, but we take that to be the phenomena keyword that we normally see on the cards. So I've got only a couple more adversaries to go, but here's, well, actually, no, just one, actually. And this is the one where the card title is noticeably different, and it's a shame it was changed, actually, because I'm actually kind of a fan of it.
Oh, no. That's too dark. It's too dark.
Dude, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, I know why they changed it, but I wish they didn't.
Yeah.
What season is that episode?
This is the last Monster of the Week episode for season 2. It's from our town. And they did have the logo in the episode that was "Good People, Good Food." That was the slogan for the 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 Chicken restaurant. But oh my God, I wish they'd kept that title.
Nathan is working on a season 1, 2, 3 revisited. Maybe he should come up with another adversary and borrow that.
Nathan, if you're watching this, make this happen, sir, because that was a good adversary to go out on. So also, I didn't get a chance for Mr. David May to weigh in on, but yeah, some of these were just kind of more like blank, and maybe they were just intended for like this kind of more like the template, for the alpha card, and then you have the template for the beta ones here. So I don't know if that was if there were. I guess this would have been a great question to ask him if there was an option to, like, if you had an idea for a card, fill it in and turn it into Andy. You know.
I'm sure.
Oh yeah, that was the drinking at Dave May's trailer card right there. That's what those were for. We're drinking. We figured out a good one. Let's scribble it down.
All right, so now we're getting to the witnesses.
Oh, we're doing witnesses, Steven. I thought we were gonna like crack that pack, man. I was getting excited.
Oh, we're gonna do that. But there's a reason I want to do witnesses, because I've got you gentlemen here, especially I got Mr. David Peace with us, and so
we already know where that's going. We know.
We do know where this is going. So I want to point out that we're looking at the alpha version for Billy Miles, and we got the beta version here. So looking at the alpha version, they pretty much had the skill modifier down. So again, this card's written with the activator just in fuller text. This card may be played during your turn to add +1 to one team's alien investigation skill check. So basically, it's just the activator and the game effect are kind of just spelled out in a single sentence. But here, then you get to have the activator just be a single word, and you got your keywords, and then just your skill along with your flavor text in there. So that's the breakdown for that. And let's get to next one here, which again is
Seth Green,
and I forgot the name of the actress who played Zoe, but yeah. So again, the alpha card, which still has the primary and secondary going on here before we eventually get the resource point as the cost of it. So again, you got the rarity for the beta card here, along with the episode title here at the bottom. And now, oh no, actually there's one more to go. We got Mr. Frank Briggs. So once again, alpha card just gives you the activator and the effect just in a single sentence, and then it's broken down here and commercially released one. And now
I always felt bad for that guy. Oh no, I like in that episode, I always felt bad for that guy. Like, like he investigated, Eugene Victor Toombs for like the majority of his life, and then it's like, oh hey, we might have a lead, and it's like, cool, I'm in a wheelchair, have fun. Like,
he never got closure.
I felt bad for him, like he should have been out there.
He did get some closure.
Years old in the episode. He had to be knocking on 90 in that episode.
So now we come to a very notable card here, for which I'm glad we have David Peace with us, because this is a card that I like to use from time to time, same as Mike. So we have Mr. Kevin Morris, head of the Kevin Morris Mafia, and here we have his alpha card, and here we have his beta card. So what's worth noting here on Mr. Kevin Morris's alpha card is he has an entirely different effect altogether. And that effect says, play this card during your turn when attempting an alien investigation skill check. Flip 2 cards and pick one to resolve the skill check. Place the other back in your deck and shuffle.
Dax, make it happen, buddy.
And so, yeah, David, so Mr. Kevin Morris had 2 different effects during his time as a playtest card before we finally got the commercial one. So he had some range to his value as a inclusion in a deck. What do you say to that, sir?
Should have been axed. Should have been left on Dave May's trailer floor.
And yeah, by the time we get to the beta version, they have moved over to they have resorted to the add 1 RP every time a keyword alien or evidence collection card is played. So interestingly here it says conduit, same as demo. Interesting. Same as demo.
You know, like a card that I would like to see, because you know how the card.
And I have 2, by the way. 2 copies of it.
The cards supersede the game rules, right? Mm-hmm. What about a card that allows any 2 of the same witness to be in play at the same time?
Like the Samantha Mulder card does?
No, but you can't. Like, it says you can have any one of those or any number of those, but like, what about having 2 Kevin Morrises in the field at the same time?
I'm game for that. What do you say, David?
I think that's a terrible idea.
You know what we'll do? Mike, we'll base it on Samantha Mulder. You know that episode where he went and he found them and like all the kids were clones or whatever? Yeah. Like we'll find something from that episode and be like, yeah, they're allowed to be here because they're all clones or whatever, and then Kevin Morris's will be allowed to be in play. That'd be amazing.
So this is Dr. Diamond here, who's one of the few keyword resources that were available in Premier's Witness suit. So the way they spell it out on the alpha card is that it says adds +1 to 1 agent's behavioral skill check during your turn. This card will stay in the field and contribute its bonus to 1 team every turn. If at any time there are no agents in the field, discard this card. Now, that's a far cry from what we get in the commercially released ones, which just says adds 1 to the agent's behavioral skill check once during your turn.
Yeah, it's pretty wordy there for.
Well, it's also a lot more useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very helpful when it's spelled out that way.
I'd love to see. There's got to be a book, right? Like, you know, I got the Scully set book of all the approvals and changes or whatever. Those books have to exist for these cards. Like, there has to be some written down explanation as to why they changed these things.
Well, yeah, in those reports that they were saying they had to submit after their playtest sessions.
Yeah.
Somebody has those. He said he mailed them, like physical mail as well as email.
Unless they were destroyed.
So I want to point out for Brad Wilczek that his witness card in alpha version added +3 computer as opposed to the +2 that you get in the finalized version. He was able to add up to 3 at one point. Now, got to think that maybe Byers at some point. I wonder when we get to Byers, he's coming up soon. So I wonder maybe Byers might have had a bit more computer to his name in alpha, right? He's got to, right? They could not have nerfed Byers that bad, could they?
Isn't the story that he snubbed him at GenCon or something? So they nerfed his card as a revenge thing.
That's the rumor.
And now we have
we need to get that actor on for an interview, and we'll just nail him to it. It's like, what did you do at GenCon to get your card nerfed?
I talked to him at FilFest. Sorry, FileFest. And
no, you're right. You had it right the first time, according to that star.
To us, it will always be Phil Fest.
I know, right? No, it was cool, but like it was just so bizarre to like actually be like, hey man, can you sign this card? He's like, yeah.
Oh, so here's an interesting discrepancy. So we have Michelle Genereux, who we know in the commercially released version has, much like Kevin Morris, the effect that allows it to add an RP to the pool every time a keyword, computer, or bureaucracy card is played. When it was an alpha card, it says playing this card allows one team of agents to add their skills to a skill check that is occurring in another section of the table. They use the skill number -1 on any check. For example, skill 4 becomes skill 3. Long range and close range combat skills may not be added using this. So basically, she was a cell phone.
Yeah.
And so here, even more interestingly, when you get to the beta version of Michelle Genereux, her effect has evolved to become change any keyword to any other keyword on a card played by your opponent. That's the thinker.
Yeah.
They just had a hard time trying to come up with something for this one.
Yeah, they really had a hard time. Yeah.
Is there a thinker card?
Yeah, he should be at the very end. Let me just verify that.
I just think we're seeing a lot of great examples of the evolution of the cards.
In here, but his is different. So we'll circle.
I gotta give mad props to you, Stephen. Like this, like you went full on Dewey Decimal System on like preparing all this. Like it's crazy good, man.
Well, the thing is like when David May texted us to be like, "Hey, can we start early?" I was in the middle of doing it. I'm like, I'm not done. I had my daughter in the bathtub, so I'm like, I'm trying to do two things at once at that point. So I was like, all right, we're gonna do multiple shows, and plus, I realized, when he's like, he's pressed for time. I'm like, there's no way we're getting through this in one show, which is fine. So we're gonna do a follow up, and we're gonna pick up where we left off. We're gonna go through the events. We got the bluffs, the equipment, the combat cards to go through as well, and there's a lot of good stuff in there, guys. I promise you. I don't want to it would take too much time just to go through all the stuff, and I want to show everyone, as they have here. So anyone who wants to really take note of these disparate effects, especially those of us who are making cards for these expansions. So here we have Max Fennig, and his card really did not change at all from alpha to the finalized version. So you had some instances where the effect did not evolve as much as it did for Michelle Genereux, but that's interesting though. The evolution of her card is very, very interesting, much like Kevin Morris. And
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to evolve that one card for nobody to ever use it.
I wouldn't say that. We use her from time to time, much like we use Kevin Morris. I guess they just didn't have a sense, because the cards like Kevin Morris, where it deals with resource points, which wasn't a component for the alpha at the time because they had the primary and secondary going on. So obviously having an effect pertaining to RP points wouldn't have existed at this point in time. So but it is interesting to see that even when Michelle Genereux had her beta test card, they didn't have that. They had the thinker version. And it's interesting to see that there were instances where let's move this effect to a different card. So we had examples of that as well.
It could have felt like the thinker was having that effect on the thinker was a little more thematic with the show.
True. But we'll have to see
we need a lot of easier cards, so we'll just make Genereux add +2 to computer or whatever, and make it an easier one. There he is.
There we go. So we have buyers here. So as we saw with Brad Wilczek, he had 3. He could add +3 to a computer skill check. So maybe buyers had a little bit more that he could do, like Brad Wilczek. Maybe, right? He's got to, because he's one of the lone gunners.
GenCon,
right?
Free GenCon, come on.
Right? No
dice. So he pissed him off. The shaft from day one.
Robbed.
He pissed him off way back then.
From the beginning. Oh, rude.
Yeah, no change whatsoever. His alpha card effect is the same throughout. He was always intended to be a +1 to computers, because these playtest cards, they existed before, he snubbed them, right? So yeah. So that rumor,
maybe he snubbed them because his card sucked.
Oh, there you go. It's like, why am I not a cool event like Langley and Frohickey, right?
That's a decent point.
Yeah.
All right, so Charlie Toscani, his also remained unchanged from alpha to commercially released. And next we have the Tribal Elder. So really the only difference with this one is that the name Ish was not added until we got to the commercially released one. And now there's going to be an instance where I think they were kind of at the mercy of not being able to just Google search some of the finer details of the characters. And that's going to be apparent when we get to the very end of the witness cards, that not having Google at your fingertips was a little bit detrimental. But thankfully, by the time you got to the commercially released ones, they were usually able to clarify some of those mistakes, although Karen Kossoff is one of those that slipped through the cracks. She was not in the episode Born Again, as it's stated on her card.
All right. 1, 2, 3, drink.
Oh, my bad.
So,
sorry.
I'm already out.
What's the drinking game involved here?
I don't know. Just I wanted to coordinate it.
Every time Steven says Kevin.
Really? You guys have to drink every time I say Kevin?
Oh,
yeah,
man.
There
Kevin?
it is.
There it is.
Oh, man, I feel bad for any of you who was drinking anything hard, because, yeah, I'll just be like dropping the Kevin throughout the rest of this broadcast.
It would be like the Kiefer Sutherland damn it story.
Dude, by the way, this is the new studio and I'm not quite set up with it because we're at the new place, but I still got the Kim and the Cougar card up there.
Kim
man.
Bauer and the Mountain Lion.
Oh, dude, the Mountain Lion. Yeah. It's still up there. It's perfect.
So we have Dr. Nolette here, another one of the resource generating witnesses, also another member of the Kevin Morris Mafia. And so his alpha playtest card says, this card may be played during your turn to add +3 to a team's sciences skill check. So he was kind of like Wilczek, where he could add up to 3 to a skill check before, again, he was amended to a resource point witness.
Or he became part of the Mafia.
Yep. Where he could be way more useful. So now we have Richard Matheson, another one of the resource witnesses, the very few, and yeah, his card his alpha card is interesting in that it really wasn't a resource card when it was in alpha. So it says this card may be played during your turn to add +1 to one team's bureaucracy skill check. No resource, but it goes on to say the effects of this card may not be negated.
That's interesting.
So like Deep Throat could not be negated. So Matheson was powerful only in that, regardless, he's getting played. Ain't nothing going to stop him from contributing that bureaucracy skill. So they did away with that. And so when it gets to beta, we do have it as a resource card, and the effect is pretty much verbatim what it is on. So interesting. A witness card that cannot be negated.
Hey, Steven, how many more witness cards you got?
Not very many.
Keep going. I got to run to the bathroom real quick.
All right, sure. Because, yeah, I'm in Season 2 witnesses, and as we know, the shows, it doesn't go past Season 2 in these cards. Oh, except for one. Or actually, no, 2. Sorry.
Jonathan, I think you need to step away to get your Kevin Morris shirt.
Oh, I could go get it.
And speaking of Kevin Morris and his trusty Mafia, so here's another resource-generating witness right here, Dr. Saul Grissom. And so his alpha card obviously is going to be different from his beta and the commercially released one because, again, they were dealing with primary and secondary instead of resource points as a cost. So for Dr. Grissom's effect, it says this card may be played during your turn to add +1 to one team's behavioral skill check. So basically, he was he had the same effect as Dr. Diamond, but Dr. Diamond was a resource card even in alpha, and whereas in the case of Dr. Grissom, he was just +1 to behavioral. That's it. Just basically a lowly +1 to one specific skill check, like Billy Miles or Sheriff Spencer. So usually the ones you don't see very often. So we don't have a +1 behavioral witness that is just as a one shot. We have Dr. Diamond, but he's a witness resource. So this is interesting to note that this card existed as that +1 behavioral for one turn only before it evolved to the resource one. So that's kind of an interesting, because I do wonder when I made my witness spreadsheet so we could use for building additional cards for the expansions. I noted that +1 as a one-shot was sort of missing outside of Dr. Diamond, and so that's where it went. And now we have another member of the Kevin Morris Mafia. Yeah, they're out and about tonight, David. And so again, we got Kristen Pilar, and her beta version is basically on point with the commercially released one. At cost, rarity, all of it matches up. And here for her alpha version, the alpha version of her card, you can see it's pretty wordy. It says, play this card on any team of agents in the field during your turn. As long as one agent in that team remains in the field, this card remains in play. Any occult creature must deal its damage to her first. Close range combat is 1, health is 2. If Kristen Kilar is sent to the hospital, she is removed from play. In addition, if the team is able to keep Kristen Kilar from going to the hospital after one attack by an occult creature has been resolved, her card is discarded, and the owning player may ask one motive question.
Oof.
Wow.
I can see why they trimmed that down. That's
a pretty crazy card.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot imagine Dax squeezing all of this text onto one of these cards. Granted, you can take out the first sentence, which is basically just an activator. But even then, I have a hard time imagining all that flavor text being able to fit in there, and especially because you got the slide graphic going on here. So I just don't see a way that would have fit. But Dax, this would be a cool one to draw up if we can maybe make a version of this card, or maybe do a witness in one of our upcoming expansions that can do this. This is a pretty cool effect. I like this.
Cool effect. It's too cheap. You couldn't do it for 3.
Well, no, that's before they had the point system there.
Yeah.
Refined the
3 RP on the current card, but that's a cool card.
That is a very cool card. I like, so Kristen Kilar, pretty cool in alpha, and I still do like her beta card, but damn, I would love to see a witness that has that alpha effect. That's pretty cool. And Mike is rejoining us. You missed a pretty good witness card. The Kristen Kilar card, Mike, was pretty awesome, dude. You could actually get a question out of that, potentially, depending on how a combat was resolved. That was pretty cool. So we have Dr. Daniel Trepkos, whose effect was unchanged, primordial creature from alpha straight through beta to finalized version. And we have Geared Thomas, who also unchanged, +1 to observation from beginning to end.
I thought that was now like when you had acid reflux is what that was.
All right. Well,
no one got that. That's all right.
I got it.
I got nothing. Went right over my head.
Yeah, GERD. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So So Gung Bituin is pretty much the same. It's just the wording was just a bit different. Or actually, it says play this card during your turn on a team that is in combat with an occult creature. Interesting. So Gung will enable the agents to deal damage to occult creatures that normally can't be damaged by an attack, which is basically his effect as it is here. But I think they just refined it to obviously not state specifically you can play it during combat, because then they eventually realize, combat cards only while combat's going on. And now we have Bill Mulder here, and I don't have the And I say this is a complete set, but I don't have the beta card for Bill Mulder, unfortunately. But his alpha card is pretty much, it's the same. Adds +2 to subterfuge and can prevent Mulder from going to the hospital. There's not really... I know we've had some questions about that previously, Jonathan, and yeah, it's a shame. Unfortunately, this card does not clarify that. It just said... Well, actually, it says any attack that would send Mulder to the hospital may be negated, whereas it just says over here, any card. So I know we've gone back and forth on whether or not we felt that this included combat, and I've been on the position that it doesn't. That this is intended for like cards like injured relative or unnatural aging, but I don't know. The alpha card seems to support that a little bit. The
alpha card would clearly be, combat.
Yeah, attack. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so, oh no, actually, I'm sorry. I did have the Bill Mulder card. It was just, I know, Mike, as impressed as you were with my sorting abilities, I still made a mistake in there.
We're not angry, just disappointed.
Yeah, Dewey made some great shit, but he messed up from time to time.
And so again, Jonathan, your position is supported on the beta card. It does say any attack before obviously it was amended to any card. So interesting. And John Yost is joining us. I didn't really check the comments, so thankfully we didn't have too many up until this point. So John Yost, thanks for joining us. He does say, yes, Bill can stop a bullet intended for Mulder. I don't know. I'm not quite on board with it yet, even though the playtest cards do back it up.
More on board with it now than he was.
yeah, you have a stronger case for it, but we also have a stronger case for removing all copies of Deep Throat from our decks the first time it's played. So if we're going to adopt the Bill Mulder card as it is in playtest, we're going to do that for Deep Throat.
I don't know, though. They completely took that out. That would kind of mean that they don't want you to do that, I would say.
So the Samantha Mulder
Spirit of the game.
You cut out there, Mike. I missed that. What'd you say?
Sorry, I said spirit of the game.
Spirit of the game. And there's John Yost's response to that. So the Samantha Mulder card originally wasn't a resource card as of this point. So it's just added +1 to subterfuge and called it a day. But by the time it gets to the beta card, we could keep her in play. But as of this point during beta, they didn't even have that extra stipulation that we sort of that I mentioned earlier, in that it says you may have any number of Samantha Mulder cards in play. So that was sort of added a little last minute, but apparently not play tested. Because we've often bickered about whether that includes more than 2.
Well, I mean, the card supersedes the rules, right?
Yeah, the rules say no more than 2 cards, but the cards.
But if you can only have 2 in your deck.
But that's the rules. That's not the card. The card trumps the rules.
Yeah,
I don't know. So again, I have 2 copies of Dr. Lascos.
Shades of Gray, gentlemen. Shades of Gray.
So worth noting here is that Dr. Lascos, who normally just adds 2 to any team's medical skill, her alpha card allowed for +3 to medical, and then it was reduced to 2 by the time you get to beta. And I got Maggie Holvey here, and this one interestingly has an asterisk next to her name. So let's see if we can figure out why that is the case. So Maggie Holvey, her alpha card has an asterisk on it.
At the risk of being canceled, is she trans?
Demonetized.
Well, there you go. Yep. How many people are clicking unsubscribe right now? Thanks to you, Mike. Well done. I just got 150, by the way.
To be fair, there was no trans then, so that can't be.
Yeah.
None of us knew what that was yet.
All right, so moving on to that one before
let's move on here.
All 150 of my subscribers. All right, so we get to the 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬, who I have 2 copies of this one. and its effect is unchanged from beginning to end. Negates any one occult creature. And even the flavor text is unchanged as well. The cost is 3 RP in the beta version, but it was reduced to 2 by the time you get to the commercially released one, which is good because those are highly favorable witness cards, especially when you got manners on your team. And we're almost done here, guys. And then I got a really special, a couple special ones at the very end here. U.S. Marshal Tapia, unchanged from beginning to end. And we have another member of the Kevin Morris Mafia making an appearance, Dr. Osborne, who in beta was played during your turn to add +2 to one team's medical skill check. And so that was changed when you get to the beta when they realize we're going to be working with resource points, not primary, secondary. So his effect becomes what you see on the commercially released card. Although its rarity at this time was listed as uncommon, that was obviously changed to rare by the time you get to this, because all the resource generating witnesses are rares. And only a couple more witnesses to go through. We have Dr. Davey here. No change from beginning to end. And so we did discuss the Thinker earlier because Michelle Generou's Alpha playtest card had the Thinker's effect. So here we have the Thinker, and its Alpha effect states, this card may be played during your turn to add +2 to one team's computer skill check. So he was a computer guy, which is faithful given what happens in the episode. But it goes on to say, alternately, you may use this card to make a Subterfuge 3 skill check. If successful, you may ask if the adversary's affiliation is government. So I guess, yeah, go ahead, David.
I was just going to say maybe a little overpowered, and that's so they took out that line.
Yeah.
Because Dave May was even saying, what asking a question is very powerful in this game, so we can't just be throwing it around.
Yeah,
that's probably the thinking. There was like, well, we can't just have people asking questions so easily that the game is finished, in 10 minutes if you can stack your deck.
There were obviously a lot of alpha cards that allowed for the asking. Well, not a lot, but several that were allowing you to ask a question as part of the card.
Yeah.
And of course, that's whittled way down. There's very few cards that. And it's hard, you're making like 6+ skill checks with certain cards to ask a question and stuff like that. And it's very.
Well, I mean, Premier, there's what? Just Deep Throat, right?
Well, you have cards like deductive reasoning, counterintelligence measures.
Message from the stars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chester Bonaparte, Spirit Guide. There were some in there. Any cards that have a keyword question, which wasn't a keyword found on beta. Now, what's also worth noting about the Thinker is he actually had his beta card has Michelle Generou's final effect, adds +1, adds 1 RP to your pool every time a keyword computer or bureaucracy card is played. So at some point they realize, okay, we're gonna swap out those two effects. We're gonna give this effect to Michelle Generou, and Michelle Generou is gonna get the keyword changing effect. So the decision behind that, I would really love to have been, the fly on the wall for some of those decisions, because I think that's faithful, and I'm glad they worked that out as opposed to this whole thing with the question, which really makes me wonder if the Thinker would be as much CP fodder as he typically is had that effect remain unchanged. And my guess is probably not. So here's a very, very interesting card that we have here, in that, again, calling back to what I was saying about how they must not have had ready access to the answers to some of those questions. Back then, we saw the episode air on TV, and they didn't have the episode titles flash on the screen or anything like that. So if you missed that episode during broadcast, you had to wait till the summer before you could actually see that in rerun, unless you happen to have taken a VHS tape and recorded it. So apparently there was a point when they must have been like, oh gosh, who was that character that Peter Boyle played in that season 3 episode? I can't remember his name. So we'll just put Peter Boyle down on there. And I guess note your asterisk on there.
Yeah, look, we need to go back and fix that later.
So Peter Boyle was at one point a witness card, and his effect is interesting in that it says you may play this card on one team of agents to negate one evolutionary creature during your turn, and that was the effect that was given to the Dr. Blockhead card. But during Alpha, and even during Beta, that negate evolutionary creature was to Mr. Peter Boyle.
Dude, that's freaking fire, man. Like,
yeah, that's cool.
That's like one of a kind each that you have there. That's amazing.
Well, actually, more like two of a kind, because I have two copies of the beta version right here. So.
Flex.
Pretty cool.
Flex.
Yeah.
You like that card, Mike? I've got 2. How many do you have?
I know, right?
So that begs the question: is the Clyde Brookman, as we know, as an agent card in the 1013 expansion at this early point was considered a witness, which kind of jives in that a lot of times the agent cards were law enforcement, except for like Hosteen and Brookman, but they also at some point figured out that his name, it's not Peter Boyle. We figured out his name. It's Clyde Brookman. So here you go. You've got Clyde Brookman, the agent card with 1013, and here is his beta card, but again as a witness. And the effect is unchanged. Negate one evolutionary creature. So we do not have I don't know, Mike, you had the 1013 play test set. Do we have Clyde Brookman in that? I know you gave a lot of them away, so I don't know if...
God, let me look really quick. Give me a minute.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to note that, because obviously at some point, the negate one evolutionary creature effect was shifted over to Dr. Blockhead, because there's no Dr. Blockhead card in this set of witnesses. So at some point, they decided to align that effect with Dr. Blockhead. And also, I guess there's maybe at some point, because this is season 3, that they, by and large, they're like, okay, we're just going to cover the first 2 seasons, and we'll keep season 3 cards, separate. Although they did release some with the Truth Is Out There edition exclusives, like Injured Relative, which is from The Blessing Way, and Limited Choices, which is from Paperclip. So you did get some season 3 cards in the Truth Is Out There edition expansion, but by and large, they decided to adhere to only seasons 1 and 2 for this premiere edition. But
is Clyde Brookman the only agent who's not an agent? Is he the
well,
only
you got Dr. Charles Burke and Albert Hosteen, and
that's right. Hosteen's not, and Burke.
Yeah.
Well, Burke was an agent. He was some scientist guy on his own.
Yeah, he was more of a consultant, much kind of like the lone gunman, not an informant, but more of an outlet for Mulder and Scully to go to for when they needed some specialized information. So I say that this is one of the few cards that dip into season 3, and by and large, this playtest set does not have any of the 1013 expansion cards, except for, as I said earlier, the ultra rare near-death experience for Mulder, which is an event. So we'll show that one later on in a follow-up episode. But there's one other card from the Witness set that was included in here with a very different effect, and that is the Men in Black ultra rare from 1013. And here we have its alpha and its beta card, which is decidedly different from what we get with the 1013 card. Here in the beta version, we have the Men in Black, which it just has an asterisk, again, note, because I guess maybe they were not decided on the title of the card yet. It says, you may play this card on one team of agents to negate one government creature during your turn. Now that effect was ultimately given. Well, government creature we don't have that. We have a negate government pawn, which was given to Sheriff Mazeroski, the witness card, but that card is not included in here either. So at the time, they didn't have a Sheriff Mazeroski witness, so they decided to, I guess at some point, they're like, okay, we're going to give government creature, we're going to give government pawn to Mazeroski, and so that effect was dropped. Over in the beta card, you have, even at this point, the Men in Black's effect was negates one government adversary. So no pawn, no creature specified. The negate one government adversary card was also an event in 1013 called Work a Deal, which also pertained to the taped intelligence equipment card as well. So this card went a long way before we got to this.
Steven, what's the timeline on that?
What do you mean?
As far
this
as,
episode?
well, I mean, like Alex Trebek and what's his name?
Jesse Ventura. Okay, so this is from Jose Chung's From Outer Space, which that's a great question, Mike, because this is late season 3, which would have been spring of '96. When about April, I would say, when this episode actually aired. So actually, it's a good thing you mentioned that, because my thinking is that this is probably referring to the Men in Black that accosted Mulder and Scully in the Deep Throat episode that we see on the authorized access only card, where they're pulled over and all their evidence is taken. Yeah, exactly. So I think that maybe I pulled the Men in Black card because it's the only card that even comes remotely close to that. But here's the thing, and I'm not going to show this tonight. I'm going to bring this card back into play because there's some interesting stuff in these playtest cards with regards to sites, and specifically keyword resource sites, where the effect for those cards is what we get here in some form. So I'm going to call back this card when we do our follow-up episode, because there's some very interesting stuff to note in some of those site cards that might be worth considering if we want to make those included in future expansions, but it's going to have to be play tested the hell out of, because it may be a bit too powerful, especially on the conspiracy resource side. It's basically this card, like cards like this and the Amaru Urn that was released in 1013, that involved like being able to store some cards underneath this card and use them at a later point. So we'll come back to that in our discussion in a follow-up episode to this, because we're getting late on time. So
I want to hear that debate, because remember, I wanted to have my witness add the keyword resource to a site so that it stayed in play, and I was shouted down on that one. So I'm very curious to hear how that played out.
Well,
now, Steve,
it did make
are you going to open this pack tonight, or are you going to wait until David May can commentate on it?
Well, what do you guys think?
I'm with Indiana Jones. It belongs in a museum. Yeah, I don't think you should open it. I think it should remain sealed, and we can debate.
He's gonna open it. He's gonna open it. He's gonna open it.
Don't do it.
And I think, and this is just me. I think if you're gonna open it, right, you should at least have the man that gave it to you, that then knows it, that understands it, there to be a part of it. That's my vote.
That's fine. I'm fine holding off on it. I mean, I do have a bit of self-restraint with regards to this, but knowing just what this this top card here is a playtest card that did not make the cut, even in Scully's set. Now, Dax has actually been able to get a hold of this text somewhere in some documents, so he does have a version of this out in his Facebook album on the X-Files Collectible Card Game Facebook group. So I'm wondering if we're going to find more of these in there, but there's a lot of cards in here, though.
Honestly, man, I think cracking that thing is an episode in and of itself. And
all right.
I would be honored to host it on my channel if you'd be so kind.
Well, sure, because as we do need to, I want to go through more of these on follow-up. So we're going to go through the site cards, and maybe the event cards in the next one. So if we can get David May back for that, that'd be great. I know he's a very busy guy. I mean, insert the jingle right here.
He's a busy guy.
So I think we're gonna wrap it up. But yes, stay tuned because we're gonna take a closer look at some of the other card suits. We got sites, events, bluffs, equipment, combat to go through, and then of course there's this.
And
so I think we're gonna save that for the very end. Save the best for last.
Sealed playtest pack.
Yeah, I think this has to be the very last thing we crack open. So we're gonna get through. We're gonna take a couple more episodes before we get to that. So stay tuned. And gosh, God forbid, keep liking and subscribing, people. It was a great milestone to reach 150 just recently, and I can't thank everyone enough for supporting the channel along the way. So keep supporting and keep it up. It's just that kind of stuff just what motivates me to keep coming back with more content.
No,
I know it's faithfulness, right? You know, like, I mean, you remember when, God, what was it? Matt and I, we had 100. You know,
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, we just did that redonkulous freaking skit or whatever, you know, like, and you know, people would get a hold of me like, hey man, I'm a subscriber to your channel, and like, you're not 100,000 like that. Why'd you do that? I'm like, because I'm genuinely happy that 100 people like the stuff that I'm doing. You know, like it's awesome. It's respectful. It's appreciative. So I don't care if it's 100 or 100,000, man. Give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's definitely more motivating. I haven't gotten to editing more games and like I used to, just because again, it just felt like it had plateaued for a while. But I'm resolving this year. Now we're in 2025. I'm hoping to do some more edited episodes because I do think people enjoy watching them with all the graphics and stuff, and of course all the dead silence trimmed out so you get a more concise viewing. And I say more concise viewing when it's an hour or hour and a half, and by today's standards that is still way too long. If it's not more than 10 seconds, or if it's more than 10 seconds, it's not worth watching by today's standards. But hopefully that pendulum will swing back in the other direction at some point.
It's all good, man. We got a lot of content coming up. You know, we got a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to show, and both our channels just have a lot of things to share. So we're good.
Did you find that Clyde Brookman card in there, Mike, or did you think
I did not? I don't have it. What I have left is just a very limited amount of 1013 cards. I think I'm trying to remember too, like chalk it up.
Yeah, I took Detective Manners from your 1013 agents, so I don't know.
We gave you. Oh, that's right. That's in the FileFest video, actually.
It was in FileFest, so I don't know if we have any pictures of that. So I don't know if anyone who attended FileFest, Kurt or Chris, who has the Clyde Brookman.
Oh, dude, you can go back. You can go back and look at it, and it's
what do you mean?
My son might have it.
On the video, like, I think I give it to you on the video or something like that. I guess. Oh no, wait, was that not Manners? Sorry, not Clyde Brookman, was Manners. Yeah.
My son has a lot
we did that on a
playtest.
We did that on an episode, like a live episode. We weren't at FileFest by then. Yeah, I have Skinner. Yeah, Skinner was the one I got from FileFest.
Oh, okay.
Which actually, yeah, I guess does that actually, now that since I have the Skinner that you had in from the 1013, now I'm wondering if that matches the
Oh yeah, you should check that out.
Let's check it out. I think it's the same. Well, no, it's actually wrong. Okay. Well, let's bring the camera back in.
Do it. What do we got?
All right, so let me pull it up again. All right, so a little bit of an encore show here, guys. So, all right, so this is the 1013 version of Skinner that I got at FileFest, and here is the playtest card beta that I got from Mr. David May.
It looks like alpha because it's got the points.
Oh yeah, you're sorry. I'm sorry. This is the alpha. So I'll put them in order by evolution. So alpha, beta, and 1013.
Oh, that's cool. Dude, you have some cool stuff there, man. Like, I'm not gonna lie. When Matt and I started the channel and we got some, really cool stuff, a lot of people were envious, but man, I'm on the other side of the aisle at this point, man. I'm really freaking envious of the stuff you got there, man. That is such a huge piece of the puzzle. I love it.
This is really like addressing a lot of those questions we had about like the evolution of these cards.
Yeah.
More specifically, because I mean, before we look at these playtest cards, we're largely have broad strokes.
Yeah.
So now we're getting to the finer points about with alpha and beta here. We got a little bit of that when we got the 1013, and here's actually where we see Skinner had a pretty massive effect at that point in time, because he could,
which makes you wonder if they were gonna like reprint Skinner like for a 1013 edition.
Right. So yeah, this is crazy. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Seeing some of the evolution of these cards. So yeah, I'm gonna have to get a larger binder in order to fit all of these in, because
I bet you are.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is, like how I have like the beta card, the alpha card, the beta card, and the commercially released one. I think I'm gonna just do that and put them each in a sleeve in a row, so you can just flip through the binder and you can see them as it is here. I think that'd be pretty cool to look at, right?
That is cool, man.
So yeah, that's gonna take a lot of binders.
So
you'll have to do like I do and buy those X-Files binders that come up on eBay every now and again. They're less.
Those
than
are
20
way
bucks.
too expensive.
Oh, I usually can get them between 20 and 25 bucks.
Oh, you talking about the Topps ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah,
ones
Guillaume
are-
has one.
I
That's
bet I've
awesome,
got,
dude.
yeah, I bet I've got 10 of those.
So what do you have in there? Is that a complete set?
This is a complete set of Premier, Second, and 1013.
Promos as well?
This was actually, believe it or not, like when Matt and I started the channel, this was the grand prize that we originally had like hinted at, like a complete set. And then as we made like more friends with everybody, it was like, none of y'all need a complete set. Like some of y'all need a couple cards. Okay, we can handle that, but like we just kind of I maintain this one as just sort of, it is what it is.
Yeah, I have three. I have three like that, and then I have the one with the GenCon deck and the all the the playtest cards and the concept cards, all the really crazy stuff out there. And then I've got like 4 or 5 other ones for the trading cards, just the regular trading cards, not the.
My favorite though, I got to be honest with you though. My favorite is the one that Brian sent us that has all the there we go.
Focus.
It has all the notes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That one's pretty cool. This is my favorite set. I don't think I'll ever break this one up.
Yeah, that reminds me. So, yeah, speaking of which, so we have Mr. David May also sent me the legalese for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this, well, I guess I'll bring the camera back once more.
Yeah, do it, man. I hadn't seen that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and if Nathan were here, Nathan is, fluent in legal jargon, so he would be, he would be well suited to plow through this. But yeah, so this is closing documents related to the agreement. It's dated May 17th, 1996, and this is with Donruss. This is before the United States Playing Card Company. Well, actually, they're listed on here. Donruss Trading Cards, Leaf, and United States Playing Card Company. So I guess when we get David May back on here, because this is his copy he gave me, so let's have him.
Bring that back in when he wait. Oh,
this is basically where Donruss is essentially signing over the rights
Yeah.
The United States Playing Card Company, if I'm not wrong. That's what it is, right, Stephen?
I believe so. But again, I haven't looked through it because I was sorting through all the playtest cards. So would love to have, if we can get Mr. May back on here, we'll talk about that.
Talk about a cliffhanger, man.
Yeah, so more stuff to come. I mean, to say nothing about this.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Not now.
Don't do it.
No, not now.
It belongs in a museum.
It belongs in a museum.
All right,
you should put it up for a vote on your channel. I think you should put it up for
you can do that. You got time. Should I open this shrink wrap?
Not tonight. Not tonight.
Not tonight.
Not ever.
Tonight.
But in a follow-up show.
Yes. With Mr. May present.
Submit your vote.
Yes. Drop a comment below after you hit that subscribe button. Tell me if you think this belongs in a museum or
at Jonathan 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬's house.
That might like legit, like no BS. That might legit be one of a kind.
I'm sure it's the last sealed one in existence.
We have to ask Dave Frank. No, Dave Frank won't have a playtest set of this, would he?
Well, there's a whole list of names on the back of that rules book.
He's a pack rat too. I mean, I don't know. He might have that stuff.
And Brian Woodward gave you everything he has, so he did not keep his premiere.
Brian would send me everything.
Yeah. So it'd be cool if we can find another playtester who has the full set of these. Obviously, we know one of them gave them away to that guy who's selling them on eBay after, as he was on his deathbed apparently. But other than that, there should be quite a handful of others out there.
You'll probably see him on eBay tomorrow morning after everybody watches this video. It's like, oh my God, that's probably worth a fortune.
It is not worth a fortune.
It's not, but it is. Like it's really finicky, right? There's like 10 people that want to pay for this legend, and there's like the rest of the world that does not.
Well, and even those 10 people are not paying that guy's eBay price.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like, hey, man, I'd love to have a couple of those cards. Something that he listed or whatever. Like, I'd love to have them. Even Steven, actually, I remember I was bidding on him for a while, and Steven's like, "Dude, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know, man. Like, I'm bidding." He's like, "Stop." Like, what are you talking about? He's like, "Just stop being stupid. Don't pay that much for it." And I'm like, "Oh,
don't encourage that guy."
Okay.
Yeah, the thing was because Mike and I shared the email for X-Files CCG at Gmail. So every time he's like bidding on these things, and he's getting outvoted, and like I'm getting notifications sent to my phone, and I'm like, "Why are you doing this? Stop! You're inflating the price."
But,
and you're doing it like 6 days before the bid's supposed to end. It's not like when it's in the final seconds. It's 6 days before the bidding is supposed to end. It's like, come on, Mike.
Hey, man, Matt and I and our channel, we have a history of inflating prices. I was just trying to just stay on that train.
I would put it. Well, I would say this: if it's more than myself or Kurt will pay, it's too much, because we're kind of ridiculous. We'll kind of just pay and figure it out later. The thing you're selling is overpriced if Jonathan 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬's not willing to pay for it. So there's a ringing endorsement right there.
Hey, I was actually looking through some of the stuff I had the other day, because I got the safe and we just moved in or whatever. And like, honestly, Jonathan, I'm kind of regretting the fact that I sold you the only standalone, not on a sheet, but the only standalone Scully's Dream that I had. I'm kind of, but it is what it is.
Well, Jonathan's willing to put it up on eBay for a price.
For $100,000.
$100 million.
Yes.
So I have to say, getting back to the agents in that alpha beta thing, did I miss it? Was there not a Kresge?
Ah, there it is. Oh,
But we'll get to those in the next episode. Sorry, go ahead with the question.
I was waiting to see what Kresge's point value was in the alpha.
Oh, I don't have Kresge. He was Kresge is part of 1013. So Mike, you have that one, I think, right?
Maybe.
You didn't keep Kresge?
Damn you.
I'm pretty sure you kept Kresge. I know you kept 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬. I assumed you did not want to give away.
Sure. Oh, I'm pretty sure. I'm like 90% sure.
By the way, David, that's that's a green screen, right? Or is that genuinely at your office?
Oh no, I have recreated Fox Mulder's basement office.
Okay, now I was okay. Yeah, so we have Kresge there. So let's see what it looks like. Mike, pull it up again. All right, so
for the alpha version.
Yeah, no change. Yep.
And,
all right.
Maybe. See what happens. There we go.
You got everything X-Files CCG behind you, and then Dave Matthews Band. Yeah, so there's 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 there, which by the time I guess you get to 1013, like most of the stuff in 1013 did not change at all.
Well, I was hoping for a Kresge Alpha version where you had like this super awesome effect. Yeah, this like super great effect and like
I got a couple of those, Mike.
Points.
3 Scully's Dreams right there. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I got a couple of those. They're pretty much the same that way, but they're all different backs. They're the different colors and the.
Wait, what do you have? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. The Dunruss and.
Yeah, and they're all.
Well, they don't say Dunruss on there, do they?
Yeah,
one of them does.
That one does. If you can see it at the top.
Okay.
That one does, but the other two do not. They're all Scully Stream.
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah, cool stuff. Much more cool stuff to show off in future episodes, but we got to wrap this up, guys. And I want to thank everyone for availing their time on this Sunday night, including Mr. David May. I wish he could have stayed with us to the very end, but hopefully he's having a safe flight. And I want to thank everyone from tuning in, which was, I think, was pretty much John Yost was the only one piping up in the comments. Thank you, John, for hosting. I know you wanted to play a game tonight, but unfortunately we didn't get a chance because most of us were preparing for this awesome episode. So let's do some more games in the days to come. We got holiday weekend coming up, so maybe we can get something scheduled then.
I got my whole thing set up. My whole Studio Plus gaming mat. The table that I built is here now. So I'm ready to play some games.
All right, let's schedule something for. Are you good? Your schedule's pretty much wide open these days, Mike. So you think you might be good next weekend?
I'm unemployed. I got fired. Yeah.
Didn't want to say outright. That's.
No, it's all right.
But you're pretty much. Think you got next weekend available?
Yeah, for sure, man. I got fired by certified mail, so I'm good.
It's rough, but hey, that means more time to play X-Files CCG. So it's kind of a win, right?
Oh, dude, yeah, I'm good. We're good.
All right, we'll talk. We'll have some details.
More time
but anyway,
for Winter Slam,
watching, right? What's that, David?
More time for Winter Slam, right? You're more
availability.
Dude,
yeah, I saw that. Oh yeah, like I'm in. Like we're doing that.
I'm on call that day, so I can't go anywhere. So I'll be here, and I just
get fired like me, and we can like make it happen.
Yeah, I might turn the phone off and get fired. So
there you go.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up now. Guys, thanks so much again. And, of course, thank you so much to David May, not just for the gifts of this beautiful set of playtest cards, but also for taking the time to talk about him as he was waiting to get on his plane to Los Angeles.
Walking down the jetway.
Which I gave him crap for, honestly, like originally, Steven, if you saw that, like he's like, I got time for 1 hour. And I'm like, why? And he's like, you'll see. And I didn't know until tonight, like, oh yeah, he's at an airport. So okay, that makes sense.
You were egging him for being like so mysterious about it, and I just
yeah.
I was like, he's a busy guy, but he's also a private guy. I respect it.
We have to add like a jet icon or like GIF to like his,
Show
something like
take
that.
it off.
Yeah.
I'll have him record some kind of epilogue bit for us. All right. And so let's say goodnight and thank you everyone for tuning in. And please be sure to tune in next time for another edition of Alien Investigations. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.